Hi, I'm Sienna Rowe. I'm 31, live in Denver. And 2 weeks ago, I walked into my cousin's engagement party with a wrapped present and a smile so fake it could have been painted on. I walked out with my shirt bloodied, one shoe missing, and my face on every guest's phone camera. My uncle, no screw it. My father punched me in front of 73 people. And my mother, she laughed like she was watching stand-up comedy. My cousin Liam, the one getting engaged, smirked and said, "Told you she'd try to ruin it." Then he toasted champagne while I got dragged outside by the wrist. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part? This wasn't just a one-night humiliation. It was the collapse of a decade of gaslighting, financial theft, fake forgiveness, and betrayal. All coming down under the chandeliers of that country club ballroom. You want to know what happened after that? Well, sit tight. But before I tell you everything, tell me what time are you listening to this, and where drop a comment. I read them all, I promise. I don't even know why I showed up. I kept thinking that as I stood awkwardly near a side table, clutching a gift bag like it could protect me. The ballroom was drenched in fake elegance, white orchids, violin quartet, gold-trimmed menus, the whole 9 yards. The kind of place that existed to make people like my mother feel important. Everyone was dressed to impress. I saw a woman in a dress I swear cost more than my rent. A man in cufflinks shaped like little boats. They all came for Liam, my cousin, the family's pride, the legacy boy. And then there was me, Sienna, the girl they whispered about at Christmas and forgot to invite to Easter. Why was I there? Because I was trying again to be the bigger person. To prove I could still show up, still love them. Even when they made it clear I was always the exception, never the expectation. Across the room, I spotted my mom, Carla. She was bouncing from guest to guest like she was running for office. Smile, tight pearls, perfect. I knew that smile. It wasn't joy, it was control. My dad, Ron, was by the bar already, scotch in hand, red face, loud laugh, dangerous combo, and then there he was. Liam, the center of attention, same slicked back hair, same smug little grin. He was shaking hands with someone from the Denver Post, probably trying to make the engagement newsworthy. I didn't even get a hi before someone tapped my shoulder. "You're Sienna, right?" I turned to see a woman in a green gown I didn't recognize. She gave me a pitying smile. "It's sweet that you came. Really sweet." Sweet, like I was some kind of outreach project. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, smiling, just hard enough to not scream. She drifted off, probably to go whisper. "She looks better than I expected to someone else." That's when my mother noticed me. She glided over her heels, clicking like a countdown. "You didn't have to come if you were going to sulk," she hissed under her breath, all while smiling at a couple nearby. I blinked. I wasn't sulking. "Well, fix your face. People are watching." I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just nodded. Then Liam appeared, like he always did, just in time to ruin something. "Sienna," he said, too loud already, holding a glass of champagne. "Didn't know you could afford a dress like that." I bit my tongue. He wasn't done. "Graphic design, right? That's what you're doing now." He looked around like he was asking the room. "Not me." "Fun hobby, not really a career, but hey." I exhaled slowly. "At least I create things," I said lightly, instead of stapling my name to things other people built. His grin flickered. But before I could enjoy it, a shadow loomed beside me. Ron. His jaw was clenched, his eyes already glassy. "What did you just say to him?" he asked. I turned to face him fully. His hand moved fast. The slap cracked like a gunshot. The room stilled. My cheek flared with fire. And then he grabbed my hair. I gasped as he yanked me backward. My heels scraped the tile. I stumbled, arms flailing. My mom sipped her wine and laughed. Liam clapped. "You finally did it," he said. She needed that. No one stopped them. Not one of those well-dressed guests. Not one hand lifted. Just 73 spectators, soaking up the drama like they'd paid for front-row seats. Ron dragged me out of the ballroom. My scalp screamed. My heart pounded in my ears. He let go just past the side exit. I staggered against the wall, clutching my head. My lip was bleeding. My earring had been ripped clean out. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran. In the parking lot, I fumbled for my car keys, vision blurring. My hands shook so hard I dropped them twice. I slammed the door shut and collapsed into the driver's seat, breathing like I'd just outrun a fire. And maybe I had. I stared at myself in the rearview mirror. A stranger looked back. Blood on her lip, hair wild, makeup smudged, eyes empty. I reached for my phone. I didn't even know who I was calling. I just needed a voice. Any voice. And that's when I remembered Cleo. In college, she was the smart one, the relentless one. Now she was a lawyer, one of the best in Boulder. She used to say, "If I ever make it, you've got a get-out-of-jail-free card." Well, I wasn't in jail, but I sure as hell needed to break out of something. I hit call. It rang twice. Sienna. Her voice was groggy but alert. "Cleo, I need help." And just like that, I started to tell her. All of it. The punch, the hair, the humiliation, the years of being the scapegoat, the quiet theft, the gaslighting. When I stopped, she didn't say, "Wow," or "That's awful." She said, "Come to my office tomorrow. First thing, we're going to fix this." And for the first time in years, I believed someone. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my hair still matted, where Ron knew. My father had yanked it. My lips swollen, the bruises starting to bloom. I thought about everything I said, everything I didn't. And the worst part, I wasn't even surprised it happened. I think deep down, I always knew something like this was coming. I just never thought it would be that public, that cruel, that final. The next morning, I pulled on a hoodie and oversized sunglasses and drove through the quiet streets of downtown Boulder. The early sun made the sidewalks glow, but I felt cold inside, like my bones were made of ice. I parked outside Cleo's office, a sleek little firm tucked between a yoga studio and a French cafe, and just sat there in my car for a while, gripping the steering wheel like it might keep me from unraveling. When I walked in, her receptionist barely looked up, just pointed me down the hall. Cleo's door was already open. She stood as I stepped inside, and for a second, I thought she was going to hug me. Instead, she just said, "You ready to take them apart?" I nodded barely, but that was enough for her. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. I had already told her everything over the phone. What she wanted now was action. First thing she said, sitting behind her desk, "You're going to document every injury. Photos, timestamps, everything. I have a contact at Urgent Care West. She'll get you in under the radar. No waiting rooms, no questions, just records. Because this isn't a family spat. This is assault." I didn't argue. I just nodded again. Cleo leaned forward. "Second, you're going to give me every detail you can about your finances. Trusts, accounts, inheritance, anything they've had access to." At that, I hesitated, because that was where it all got messy. "You remember the trust Grandpa set up?" I said finally. Cleo blinked. "The one you were supposed to access at 25. "Yeah, I never did." She frowned. "Why not?" "Because Ron said it was locked until 30. He said it was better that way, more mature, more stable." Cleo's lips pressed into a line. "That wasn't true, was it?" "No." "I checked last year. It was supposed to be available the day I turned 25. But by then, it was gone. Gone transferred to a holding account I wasn't allowed to touch." Cleo stood pacing slowly. "We'll subpoena every detail. If they touched 1 cent, it's theft." She paused, then added, "And if they use that money to fund Liam's promotions or social climbing, that's fraud." I swallowed hard. "You really think we can win?" Cleo didn't even blink. "I don't fight battles. I don't expect to win." I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to. Later that afternoon, I drove to the clinic she arranged. The nurse was kind but efficient, took photos of my bruises, logged the injury on my lip, noted scalp trauma. I signed my name at the bottom of the intake form and stared at it for a moment. Sienna Rowe. Like maybe writing it down made me real again. Back at my apartment, I opened a file on my laptop labeled Family Stuff. I hadn't touched it in over a year, but now I went through every document. Emails, bank screenshots, notes from conversations with Ron over the years where he'd promised everything's under control. He was always the puppet master, always calm, while pulling strings that weren't his. I found one email from 2 years ago, him telling a bank officer to move the Rowe account funds into the holding line until Liam's commission clears. I stared at it for a long time. My money moved, so Liam could get promoted. My stomach turned. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that. Instead, I copied the email and sent it to Cleo with a message. "Found something. The tip of the iceberg." Her reply came 5 minutes later. "Start printing. I'm building the case file." That night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But then I answered. "Sienna." The voice was low, almost cautious. "Who is this?" "It's Ava," she said. "Liam's fiancée." I blinked, surprised. "I shouldn't be calling you," she said quickly. "But I saw what happened, and I saw how no one did anything. I needed to say I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know it was that bad," she whispered. "He always said you were dramatic, that you hated attention, that you were jealous." That hit hard, because that's what they always told people. Sienna, the jealous one, the dramatic one, the girl who couldn't let go of childhood wounds. "I'm not asking for anything," Ava continued. If there's anything I can do, let me know." I was about to thank her, to say something polite, but instead I said, "Did you know my trust fund paid for your ring?" Silence. "I what?" "Ron used it to boost Liam's career, and Liam used it to buy the ring. My money, my future." Ava didn't respond for a few seconds. Then she whispered, "Jesus Christ." We hung up shortly after, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Even she hadn't known. Even she'd been kept in the dark. The next morning, I met with Cleo again. We spread everything out across her conference table, documents, photos, emails. It looked less like a legal case and more like a crime scene. She brought in her friend Mason, a forensic accountant. He was quiet, analytical, and within 20 minutes had found 3 separate shell accounts, all tied to Ron's law firm. "Classic laundering setup," he muttered, tracing the flows with his pen. "Funds from Sienna's trust go to account A, then to B, and from there, into Liam's foundation." "Foundation," I repeated. Some fake nonprofit, probably created to make him look philanthropic. In reality, just a funnel. Cleo gave me a look. "We've got them!" Something shifted inside me. A sense of weight. Like the story I'd been trapped in my whole life was finally about to change. Not because they wanted it to. Because I did. That night I wrote a letter. Not to send. Just to write. It started with, "Dear Sienna, you were never the broken one. You were just surrounded by people who hated your light because it made their shadows look bigger." When I finished, I folded it and put it in my sock drawer. Not because I needed to reread it, but because I knew someday I'd forget how this part felt, and I wanted the reminder. 3 days after I met with Cleo and Mason, I got a text that changed everything. It was from Ava. Just one line. I found something. "You need to see it." I called her immediately. Her voice was shaky. Liam left his laptop open in the den. I wasn't snooping, I swear. But I saw this folder labeled Archives. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. What was in it, I asked. Photos, PDFs, scans. Stuff I don't think he meant for anyone to see. He's got copies of your trust paperwork, notes from Ron, even a draft of a prenup you were never supposed to sign. I froze. A prenup? Yeah, for you. Like, a draft document Ron made years ago. Probably in case you ever married. It basically gave him the right to control any payout. You weren't just left out, Sienna. They were planning for your silence long before this. My chest tightened. You still have access to it, I asked. I copied the whole folder onto a flash drive. If he finds out. He won't, I said quickly. But Ava, this is big. It changes everything. She agreed to meet the next day. We chose a public spot, an old train station turned coffee house, just outside Denver, the kind of place with too many Edison bulbs and overpriced muffins. I wore a hoodie again, not to hide, but because it made me feel grounded. She showed up late, looking like she hadn't slept. She handed me the flash drive under the table wrapped in a napkin. I didn't read everything she said, but what I did see, it's bad. Thank you, I whispered. She nodded, then hesitated. You know, I used to think they were just a little arrogant, just a little traditional. But after the party, after seeing Ron hit you and nobody blink, I realized they're not just cold, they're dangerous. I stared at her. You still want to marry into that? She didn't answer, but she didn't look confident either. Back at Cleo's office, we opened the files together. One by one, the pieces fell into place. Scanned copies of wire transfers from my trust fund time-stamped communications between Ron and a man named Grayson Wyatt, a partner at a private bank that no longer existed. There were strategy memos of all things, like they'd wargamed how to keep me compliant, notes about containment optics, legal triggers, and a phrase that sent shivers down my spine: she won't fight. She never has. Cleo sat beside me, silent as we clicked through the files. Then she leaned back and said, "You know what this is, right?" I nodded. Proof? No. It's a blueprint for manipulation. But now it's a smoking gun, Mason added. And combined with what we already have, this is more than civil fraud. If they submitted any of these documents to financial institutions, we could be looking at federal wire fraud. I whispered. You think the DA would care? Cleo didn't hesitate. If we package it right, yeah. We loop in the right media outlets, apply pressure in the right places, they'll have no choice. But it wasn't just about the law anymore. It was about them, about making sure they couldn't rewrite the story like they always had. Later that night, I sat in my apartment watching old family videos, ones I hadn't seen in years. Christmas mornings, 4th of July barbecues, birthdays where I smiled wide, trying so hard to belong in a family that always left me out of frame. There was one clip I couldn't stop replaying. I must have been 8. Liam was in the center showing off a new bike. Ron beamed behind him, narrating like a proud director. I was in the background holding a helmet. No one noticed me. Not then, not ever. And maybe that's why I stayed quiet for so long. Because when you grow up invisible, you start believing your pain is invisible too. But not anymore. I wasn't that girl with the helmet anymore. The next morning, I met Cleo and Mason at a breakfast joint near the courthouse. No files, no laptops, just strategy. Cleo sipped her black coffee like it was rocket fuel. Here's what we do. We don't go public yet. We go straight to the bank, Grayson's bank, and request an audit. Quietly. Force them to confirm the transactions. If they lie, they're complicit. If they admit it, we escalate. And the media, I asked. Waiting. Jenna Martinez's team is already prepped. When we drop everything. Full story, unredacted, the slap, the theft, the manipulation. I nodded, and Ava. Cleo hesitated. She's a risk, but she gave us this. If she flips, we're still covered. She's not flipping, I said firmly. She's scared, but she's not stupid. After breakfast, I went home and started packing a small bag. I didn't know what would happen next, but I had a feeling once this started, it wouldn't stop. And I didn't want to be sleeping in my apartment when someone decided to send a message. As I folded a sweatshirt into my bag, my phone rang. Blocked number. I almost let it go, then I answered. Don't think you've won, a familiar voice hissed. It was Ron. Whatever game you think you're playing, you'll lose. I didn't respond. Drop it, Sienna. This doesn't end the way you think it does. You want to fight, fine, but you're not the only one with secrets. And just like that, he hung up. I stared at the phone for a long minute. Then I opened my notes app and typed out every threat, every call, every warning he'd ever thrown my way. You don't just build a case with evidence. You build it with patterns. 2 hours later, Cleo texted me. They blinked. The bank's legal team called. They're reviewing all account activities. That means they're scared. That night, I stayed at Cleo's guest room. It was small but safe, and I finally slept. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough. Enough to wake up the next morning with a different kind of fire in my chest, because now we had leverage. We weren't just reacting. We were moving, and they couldn't keep up. By the time the audit request reached Grayson Wyatt's desk, I already knew what he would do. He'd stall. Say he needed more time. Try to shift the blame. That's what men like him did. I wasn't expecting truth from him. I was counting on fear, and fear doesn't whisper, it scrambles. Cleo got the call around 9:20 a.m. He's sweating, she said. Their internal legal team just sent a message saying they cannot confirm the validity of the transfers at this time, which in corporate speak means we caught them. I didn't smile, not yet. Mason, who'd barely said 10 words all morning, finally looked up from his laptop. He's not just scared of you, he's scared of being named. Grayson's been doing this kind of favor for rich families for years. If this comes out, you won't be his only problem. I stirred my coffee and said, good. That same afternoon, Jenna Martinez, the journalist Cleo had looped in weeks ago, texted, "We're live tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp." The headline she sent over was brutal. Denver heiress, beaten by father, defrauded by family, private documents, public consequences. It felt surreal. My name on that title. A photo of me from the engagement party, attached hair-tangled cheek, bruised blood, just visible at the edge of my mouth. The image I never wanted anyone to see was the very thing that made the truth impossible to ignore. At 9:59 the next morning, I stood in Cleo's kitchen phone in hand, breath held. By 10:03, the article had been picked up by 3 other outlets. By 10:10, it was trending. By 10:14, Ron called. I didn't answer. This time, I let the world speak first. The comments came fast. Some supportive, some vicious. People saying I was brave. Others calling me spoiled. that I should have handled this privately, but I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, they were responding to my story not one Ron had polished and rewritten behind closed doors. Liam called at 11:26. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me needed to hear his voice when he knew the house was burning. "Sienna," he said. No smugness, no fake charm. Just my name like he didn't recognize it anymore. "You saw it?" I asked. "I read it," he said. "All of it. And I didn't know it was that bad." I nearly laughed. "You watched it happen." "That night, yeah. But before that, I didn't know what Ron had done with your trust. I swear. I thought it was just family money." "Family money I never saw," I said coldly. He exhaled. "Look, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't want this to ruin Ava." I paused. Ava's not the one who clapped while I bled. There was silence on the other end. Then she left. That stopped me. "Packed her bags this morning," he said. "Said she couldn't marry into a family that covers bruises with lies." I didn't know what to say. He added quieter this time, "You win, Sienna." But he was wrong. This wasn't about winning. This was about ending the story the right way. After we hung up, I called Ava. She picked up on the second ring. "I didn't want to text," I said. I heard." "I couldn't stay," she said. "Not after seeing what they did to you, and knowing I was supposed to smile through it." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Thank you for the flash drive, for the truth." Ava was quiet for a second. Then she said, "They tried to make you the villain. But villains don't tell the truth. They erase it." That night, I drove to my childhood home, not to make peace, to reclaim silence. It looked exactly the same, perfect lawn, perfect lights, perfect illusion. I didn't knock. I just walked up the steps and waited. Ron opened the door. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. His eyes were bloodshot. His tie was loose. For a second, he looked like a man who'd finally been caught. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Neither should half the money in Liam's portfolio," I replied. He didn't answer. I took a step closer. "I'm not here to scream. I'm not here to threaten. I just wanted to see if you'd lie to my face one more time." "You think this fixes something," he said bitterly, dragging the family through the mud. "No," I said quietly, "but it frees me from it." He scoffed. "You always needed to be the victim." I stepped back. "And you always needed someone to blame." I turned to go. Then he said something that chilled me more than any slap could. "You think you've ended us? You just lit the match. Watch what burns." I didn't turn around. But as I walked back to the car, my fingers found my phone and I typed a message to Cleo, "Prepare for retaliation." By the next morning, the smear campaign had started. Anonymous social media accounts popped up overnight. Posts accusing me of exaggerating, stealing, faking injuries. One even claimed I'd blackmailed my own father for money. They uploaded edited footage from the party cuts that made it look like I'd lunged at Ron first, that he was defending himself. It was disgusting. Cleo called the moment she saw it. He hired someone. Probably that firm he used during the Vasper zoning lawsuit. "Remember?" "Yeah," I said. "He weaponized spin." "Doesn't matter," she said. "We expected this. And we're ready." Rick, Cleo's private investigator friend, confirmed that the accounts were all traceable to the same IP, one that belonged to Ron's office. We documented everything. By noon, Cleo had filed a cease and desist along with a digital harassment claim. We were playing a different game now, and they were losing. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, like rain after smoke. That night, I sat on my balcony wrapped in an old blanket, listening to the city breathe around me. The sky was wide and dark, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I wasn't hiding anymore. My phone buzzed one last time before midnight. A text from an unknown number. "You made your point, now stop." I didn't reply, because they still didn't get it. This wasn't about points. It was about peace, and peace only comes when truth stops knocking and walks right through the door. 2 days after the smear campaign began, I walked into Cleo's office and dropped a thick envelope on her desk. She didn't ask what it was. She just opened it and began scanning the pages. Inside were the last missing links, bank receipts, real estate records, and 3 notarized statements from former employees of my father's firm. One of them was a temp assistant who remembered seeing Ron sign off on trust withdrawals while muttering, "She'll never check." Cleo looked up, her face calm but lit from within. "This is it. I want everything filed," I said. "Criminal, civil, federal if it qualifies. I don't care if it takes months. I want it on record. I want a paper trail so long they trip over it every time they try to climb out." She nodded, pulled her laptop toward her, and said without blinking, "Then we go to war." By noon, we had drafted the first official complaint, 33 pages of documented financial abuse, emotional coercion, falsified legal controls over my trust fund, and yes, public assault. It didn't read like revenge. It read like a biography. A quiet life filled with silent wounds and calculated erasure. Cleo filed it that evening, and just like that, the legal fuse was lit. The next morning, Denver Legal Watch ran a headline that sent a ripple through the city's upper crust. Roe versus Roe heiress files, lawsuit against prominent attorney, father and decorated brother in explosive abuse case. There was a photo attached, not of the party, not of me bleeding. It was a recent one taken from a distance. I was walking into the courthouse head high, no sunglasses, no hoodie, just me in full daylight. Cleo sent it to me with a simple message. "You look like you're exactly where you're meant to be." That same day, Mason got a call from an old contact at the DA's office. They wanted to meet. Off the record. Someone high up had read the financial reports and wanted to talk about possible federal interest. Cleo and I showed up the next afternoon. The man we met was clean-cut, mid-40s, serious eyes, but not cold. His name was Grant Davis, assistant district attorney for white-collar crimes. He didn't waste time. "I'll be honest," he said, tapping the folder we'd submitted. "If even half of this holds up under audit, your father could be facing serious charges." "What do you need to make that happen?" Cleo asked. "Validation from the banks, a clear money trail, and someone credible from the inside." I sat forward. "I think I can give you both." He raised an eyebrow. "My cousin works at the bank where the transfers were processed. She's kept her distance from Ron for years. I can reach out." "And if she won't talk?" he asked. I shrugged. "She will." I called Natalie that night. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but she answered on the first ring. Her voice was cautious but kind. I told her everything, what we'd found, what we'd filed, what the DA needed. She went quiet for a while, then said, "I always knew he was dangerous. I just didn't think you'd be the one to finally stand up to him." 2 days later, Natalie sat with Cleo and Mason, going through everything she'd seen in the internal systems. Access logs, account trails, even email backups Ron had probably forgotten existed. She didn't just give us evidence, she gave us verification. Grant called that same night. "You've got yourself a real case now. We're opening an investigation." It should have felt like victory, but it felt like gravity, because what was coming next wasn't just exposure. It was reckoning. That weekend, I stayed at Cleo's place again. She had this tiny balcony with an old iron chair that creaked when you sat in it, but the view overlooked the city skyline just enough to feel powerful. I sat out there one night, watching the lights flicker on one by one, thinking about everything it had taken to get here. My childhood, my money, my dignity. They didn't just steal from me. They built a world where I wasn't real unless they needed someone to blame. And now that world was cracking. Harder than I expected. Louder than I planned. The next morning, Cleo's phone rang just after sunrise. It was Jenna. "You're going to want to see this," she said. "A new article. This one not from us. Roe Legacy, under investigation for multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Attached were screenshots of legal filings including mine." A whistleblower close to the case had leaked the federal involvement. Ron's firm was mentioned by name. Liam's nonprofit. Even Grayson Wyatt's shell company. I expected Ron to deny everything. Instead, he disappeared. 3 missed calls, no statement, no rebuttal. Just silence. That's when Mason said it out loud. He's prepping for indictment. But what no one expected was what came next. Because while the article was blowing up and lawyers were circling, a woman came forward. Her name was Marcy Liddell, a paralegal who worked under Ron for 10 years before leaving without explanation. She wasn't in any of our files. No one had even remembered her name. But she had something no one else did. A confession. She met me in a church parking lot on the south side of the city. She didn't want to go to a law office or coffee shop, just somewhere quiet. She pulled up in a rusted SUV, rolled down the window, and said, "I'm not here for drama. I just need to make it right." She handed me a manila envelope. Inside were printed emails, handwritten notes, even a voice memo Ron had sent late one night, slurring slightly, calling her his shadow pen. In that memo, he said, "If Sienna ever talks, we bury her. Find dirt. Find mistakes. We make her look like she's broken." I played it 3 times, then called Cleo. She didn't say a word. She just exhaled slowly and whispered, "We're done playing chess." We filed Marcy's documents the next morning, attached them to the investigation. And just like that, the narrative changed again. Ron wasn't just abusive. He was premeditated. Liam wasn't just complicit. He was funded. And I was no longer the scandal. I was the story. The courthouse smelled like old paper and polished tile. The kind of place where silence weighed more than sound. I sat outside the courtroom that morning in a navy blazer I'd borrowed from Cleo and jeans I'd owned since college. I didn't dress for power. I dressed like myself. The woman they ignored. The woman they underestimated. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. Local news anchors stood whispering behind legal interns. Ron sat at the plaintiff's table, his face stone still, his tie too tight. Beside him, Liam looked older than I remembered, his hands fidgeting under the table, his eyes not meeting mine once. They didn't expect this day to come. They certainly didn't expect I'd be the one standing in front of the judge, composed, documented, and undeniably prepared. Cleo opened with quiet precision. Your Honor, we will show that not only was Ms. Rowe the victim of physical abuse at the hands of her father, but that her trust was systematically drained under fraudulent pretenses to benefit her brother and preserve a public image built on deception. We have emails, we have audio, we have testimony. Ron's lawyer, a stiff man with gray hair and zero charm, tried to spin it. This is a family matter, he said. A private disagreement taken to a theatrical extreme. But it didn't land. Because Marcy Liddell sat in the witness box, clear-eyed and unwavering. Because Natalie from the bank testified remotely confirming the records were manipulated. Because Ava showed up, in a black dress, no makeup, holding a statement she'd written by hand. I used to think Sienna was just dramatic, she said, until I saw the things they kept hidden, until I watched Ron hit her and no one flinched, until I realized her silence wasn't weakness, it was isolation. And they built it. Her voice didn't shake once. And when she stepped down, Liam stood, not by court order, on his own. I wasn't supposed to say anything he said, but I need to. His lawyer's mouth opened in horror. Liam ignored him. I didn't take the money directly, but I knew where it came from, and I let it happen. I let it happen because it was easier, because I liked being the chosen one. I saw my father hit Sienna, and I laughed. I'm not proud of that. I was raised to think loyalty meant silence, but silence built this mess. So I'm done being loyal. It wasn't redemption, not fully, but it was truth. And sometimes that's all you need to shift the air. Cleo stood once more, closing with a single sentence. They didn't just steal from her, they tried to erase her. The judge called a recess. I stepped outside, breath-tight, hands cold. Reporters surrounded me, microphones flying in my face. I didn't answer any of them. I just walked down the steps and looked at the sky. Denver's autumn sun was blinding, sharp, honest. I heard my name behind me. Liam! He caught up, stopped just beside me. We didn't look at each other. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. Good, I replied, because it's not yours to have. He nodded once, but I meant it, what I said in there. I know I said. And for what it's worth, I hope you figure out who you are without him. He didn't answer, just turned and walked away. That night, the verdict came in. The judge ruled in our favor. The trust was to be restored in full with damages. Ron's law license was suspended pending federal charges. His firm was under investigation. Grace and Wyatt fled the state, but none of that made me cry. What made me cry was walking back into my apartment, dropping my bag on the floor, and realizing no one was going to call me dramatic again. Because I had the evidence. Because I had the voice they tried to crush. Because I wasn't afraid of the quiet anymore. Cleo brought over champagne that night. We didn't toast. We just sat on the couch watching the lights of downtown flicker through the window. You did it, she said. I shook my head. We did it. She grinned. You realize you just redefined your entire life, right? I didn't do it to rewrite anything I said. I did it so no one else writes it for me again. She raised her glass. To authorship. I raised mine back. To finally being the loudest one in the room. 2 months later, I stood on a small stage at a charity event. I used to be too scared to attend, not to perform, not to pose, to speak about financial abuse, about legal manipulation, about families that use love like leverage. I ended with this. I used to think I needed to heal in private, but then I realized secrets are what broke me. Telling the truth didn't ruin my family. It revealed what was already broken, and I'm not ashamed of that anymore, because I didn't choose this war, but I chose to end it. They gave me a standing ovation, not because I was polished, because I was honest. Now I live a quieter life. I moved to a different neighborhood, one with trees and neighbors who wave when they walk their dogs. My trust is mine again, but I barely touch it. I make my own money now, consulting design, helping women like me navigate the legal maze no one teaches us in school. I kept the manila folder, the one that started it all. It sits in the back of my closet, not because I need it, but because I want to remember. Not the pain, the proof, because the next girl might not have Cleo. The next girl might be watching her father's hand rise and wondering if it's normal to bruise and then apologize for it. And if she finds this story, maybe she won't need 10 years to get free. Maybe she'll need 10 minutes. I don't believe in revenge anymore. It's too small. What I believe in now is reconstruction. What I believe in now is voice. And if anyone from that family ever tries to rewrite my story again, they'll find out real fast. I didn't survive to stay silent. I survived to publish.